Welcome to Cultivate with Jessica Taghap, a new podcast exploring different art forms and their creative processes through interviews with some of the most exciting artists working today. In the second of my two-part chat with Mafe, I catch up with the artist shortly after attending the first of 4 performances of the Post-Poetic Machine. We get into more detail about her guest performers, which consisted of movement artist Yoko Murakami, interdisciplinary performer Peter Ciccioli, and bird linguist Enrique Enriquez, as well as her thoughts and process with each one. We also talk about the important intersection between science and art and what it means to be an artist. And with that, let's start the show.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming to the show.
Yes, of course. And thanks again for being so flexible. So yeah, so how were the other shows?
Well, they were really, really interesting, very different one from the other. Um, and it was, that was the purpose of it, bringing like 3 different people from 3 very different fields and perspectives was one of the goals that I wanted to have with the show, like because I usually have like a very private dialogue with the project in my studio, so it's my thoughts, my ideas, and I'm like in that space creating things or finding things. And to me and to the project is very important to have those moments with the audience that I can have interactions and feedbacks and dialogues and all that. And with these 3 different collaborators that I had, I really wanted to explore like different dimensions of the work. One, I was very curious with Joko about how movement, like physical movement, in some way had like a space in that type of interaction, because so far it has been more about the voice or the presence, like that type of interaction. So I wanted to see if actual movement created any type of reaction from the machines, and or how Joko will solve that, that problem of communicating with that environment. Then on Saturday, with Peter, it was also really interesting because it was, like a combination of movement and voice. But specifically for Peter's session, what I was looking for was to see how together the whole group, the audience, Peter and I, were able to configure a hybrid plural body, and how different can be the presence and the amplitude of that presence if it's a group, a community, and not like a single person. Also, it was some other space that we talked previous the show when we met. It was about that, like breaking the ice of people expressing themselves freely. With Peter, aside of that experiment of the plural body and interacting with the hybrid or the machines environment as a group, as a community, I also was interested in something else, that it was part of a conversation that we had in my studio previous the show, or before the show. about how, we wanted to experiment with that idea of how difficult can be to open up for a different kind of expression in public, unless you are, a singer or you are, already have your mind towards that, okay, I'm going to be here and I'm going to sing, or make noises, in front of all these strangers. That is also like a little bit of a resistance there that we wanted to explore, like how establishing an abstract communication, between human beings first was like, overcome, and then how from that, dimension of language, we were able to interact with another abstract entity that was the machine. Can be the light machines or the one that was like a score.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking too when I saw your performance on the opening performance. So for those that are listening, Mafe show has a bunch of different performers interacting with the machines. Mafe being the first one on opening night, and yeah, what I got from it was that it was all about communication. So with yourself, it was more, I guess, of a physical educate communication with the voice and the body. And you were talking earlier in our first conversation about like how the audience sort of gets uh interacts with it as well. And yeah, like I didn't expect it to be so interactive where we actually physically got to, touch you touching the machine and everything, and then have the machine respond to it. So yeah, I just kept thinking all about, communication, the way we communicate, the way we interact with our environment, um, and it being called the post-poetic machine. Because yeah, I think there is sort of like a um, kind of beyond words about the way we interact with our environment. And
Yeah.
so I believe on Wednesday night it was
Yeah, Joko was the
okay.
first one after me.
Oh,
She's a contemporary, I will
right,
say
right.
dancer, but her concept is about movement. So I don't know if dancer is is the right term for her.
Mm,
We might need to look at her website or ask her, but definitely she's a contemporary performer in that area. And I was really interested. I mean, I was really surprised because, as I said before, I was interested and curious about what is going to happen. What type of exchanges are going to happen between someone that is not speaking and in an environment that is extremely sensitive to sound, for example, that is only moving. So I wonder if the light machines were going to react to that, or how she was going to interact with the score, the projection that was so focused on movement, yes, but from the voice, from sound. So and it was challenging for her because our conversations were very abstract. Her work is abstract too, so that was the interesting challenge there. Like how are you gonna you know get into these, so in such a weird nature environment, because there's a lot of physics in nature happening there, um and how you dialogue with that. So she made some exchanges that were really, really impressive and meaningful. I can tell you three. One was that she began working with a structure that I built on the first performance, or that I just show how I do on the first performance. and she basically became the sculpture. I mean, she fought with that structure, trying to understand the relationship between her body and that wired body, to the point that she became one. Not like the way that I just wear it, like as a skin, like almost like a coat. She actually got inside, in some way. She moved in a way that she got in the middle of that thing, and she stand on the cube that I was seated, and she was moving inside of that entire structure. And it was, I mean, it was an incredible image, because I never thought that she was going to arrive to that situation, that the actual sculpture was going to have like a real human being inside.
Mhm.
So from the poetic point of view, the creation of that image was, I was, for me, that was, only with that I was so happy, that happened. But after that, she surprised me with, or us, with two other things, two other moments. One is that then with the light machines, she began to move around them, and she got into the empty spaces, like everybody, like they go as far as being in front of the machine, very close to them, but not like, getting into their space. And she got, very carefully moving in the negative space, and the machines were like red, crazy. I mean, they really, really felt her. So that was fascinating, because I was like, oh, so we can do that. You can, if you get into their space, there, they feel the intensity of that. That was something that I never tried, because I was always having, touching it, or having the same relationship that the audience, but never getting, inside of the thing. So that was another, discovery there. And the third moment that was for me also beautiful and surprising, and I love it, is that with the last machine, the projection, um, she had she she standed. I don't know the past of this word. Sorry, she stand up in front of the, between the projector and the wall,
Mhm.
and she like got like frozen on a position, while the machine was like writing all that, abstract circle partiture,
Oh,
or,
okay.
or score. And she was first a human, and as the graphic was like going through her, she became a very weird entity, almost like a digitalized kind of cyborg being. That was
Mhm.
another image that blew my mind, because again, you see something, that's the natural way that we relate with art, right? You see something projected in the wall, and you don't get, in the middle, or you don't get into the art and become part of the art. You just contemplate. So I was really happy that she just like got into that space and interacted that way, physically, with that virtual situation that was happening there. And she got this like almost like a very hybrid situation, because you were able to see her body, I mean the volume of her body, but all her skin, her face was like
Full of life
graphically like a mask.
flashing.
Yeah, it was
Mhm.
fantastic. So I was like, oh wow, I mean, this character that emerged from that exchange was like, not even in my wildest imagination, I can create a character like that. And I was
Mhm.
really, really happy with that. So yeah, she she showed a different space of dialogue for all of us, including me, because, and that was my whole point. I mean, I wanted to have this collaboration with these three people because I wanted to see, okay, I'm seeing all these, I'm experiencing all these things. What if someone else comes to the mix? What they can find, how they can dialogue,
Right,
you know?
right. And then the
So
dynamic changes.
yes,
Yeah, so that's very interesting that you mentioned that because yeah, like it sounds like her relationship even to the audience was much different than how, in your performance you related to us. You had us, you would nod to someone, they would come up, and then eventually we all kind of formed some kind of human chain.
yeah,
Um, you know, touching any part of your body, which was touching the wires in the machine and how that machine interacted. And with her, it was going into the audience space in a different way.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so we should actually, um, so you had different machines throughout the room. I remember, I think the machine to the left side was the one that sort of picked up like touch,
mm-hmm,
sensory touch. And each part would like light up in a different color. Can you remind me of some of the other machines that you had throughout the
sure.
room and what they interacted? I know you had a computer towards the right side that picked up sound and translated it to a graphic image, and the
Mm-hmm,
louder or more intense the sound, the more intense the graphic would be. There would be a lot of concentric circles and abstract patterns. So,
mm-hmm.
um, and the other one, if you can tell what the other ones were.
Yes, the four towers, those were four machines that had, well, the intention when I made it, when I built them, was to hold my memory. Like over the whole year that I have been in the residency in theater lab, I have been like paying a lot of attention to my perception and to all the different dialogues that I have with things that are non-human or human, you know, can be nature, objects, animals, or the environment as a whole. So I was like a crazy person recording everything, you know,
Right.
from my washer machine to sounds of the city. If
Mhm.
I went on to a park, I was, recording the birds. Everything that I, like came to my attention, I captured that. And I wanted to, because all these, different, let's say, landscapes were happening inside of me, I wanted to create machines that were able to replicate in some way or to generate some similar experience of the perception that I was having. So one machine had like memories of environments, like the city, nature, the ocean, things that were like bigger than us, that were involving. Then I had another machine with more like character driven type of things. It can be objects or animals. So I have birds, I have dogs, I have pigs, I also have my washer machine, I have the bell, you know. Then there was a machine dedicated to Enrique and his birds, because we sustained a dialogue for over 4 years based on recordings that he did of himself, speaking with his machines, his bird machines. And the dynamic was really interesting. Like he was doing his kind of, happenings all over New York. He lives in Chelsea. So let's say a Tuesday morning, he's stand on a corner, the corner of this and that street or avenue, and he used one of his instruments, record himself, and send me the audio without a word. He sent me the audio only with the street that he was, identification of the street. So then at the end of 4 years, when this project, like, my first question, like, what do I do with this? How do I dialogue with this, So it took me 4 years to build a machine to dialogue with him, So I put all these, that it was 31 MP3s that he sent me over the 4 years, and I organized them by date and place. And I created the machines for him because that's a strong memory that has driven the whole post-poetic project. And the last one, the fourth machine, was about a different dimension of communication that our perception barely perceives or catches, that is the electromagnetic field. So I was able to build a microphone that was open source, the design, by a company that actually produce and make professional microphones, to record the electromagnetic, noises that things produces, like from my computer, from, objects, and,
Right.
any electrical thing, including the light machines, because I recorded them.
Oh, okay.
So that machine was only these type of noises, interferences, these
Right.
only electromagnetic. And with these two instances, or, kind of voices or memories, when I put them together and to sound together, the machines were programmed to be random. I mean, to have a playlist and be randomized. So every time the scene, the landscape was different and completely surprised. So, completely unexpected, I didn't know what was going to happen, which kind of symbols were going to collide in a moment, and what type of situation in terms of sound was going to be there. And Joko worked with that a lot. I mean, there were moments that the sound was very busy and stressful and loud, and she worked with that a lot. Enrique and Peter didn't work too much with that because they were towards the sound. But Peter surprised me with something that I didn't expect at all. I was like, well, okay, if we're gonna turn down the volume of these 4 machines that are sounding, right? They're gonna be in the background almost as the unconscious, There's something happening there. There's part of an experience, a past experience that is there, but it's not in the surface. So I was fine with that. And I turned down the volume. But Peter, at the end of his performance, almost at the end, he stand up in front of each machine, and he tried to interpret with different sounds what the machines were drawing. So he used the graphic as a score, and he was doing, different sounds that came to the moment. So that was, for me, absolutely like fantastic, because I was like, oh my God, I mean, look at the effort that he as a human is doing to bond with this object that, in this specific context that he's doing sound with his voice and the audience voice, were really, really, underneath or in a very far plane, So that was, for me, I was like, oh, I mean, wow, that I didn't expect that. If you talk about making sense, that is something that we push when you are working with poetry. That was a very hard limit there, because it's almost a crazy act to talk to an object, you know.
Right,
So
right. But it sounds like you're really made for an interesting audio-visual experience that was like unique to the previous performances. So yeah, that's a different way to sort of create art with your voice. After Enrique's performance, it was
oh, the last one was Enrique, and I have to say, I have to
oh,
give you a parenthesis. Joko also was the only one after me to use the prototype machine, the one that people came to me and touched me, because
oh,
that machine is a touch machine. I mean, you really have
right,
to get into. It's a circuit that needs that,
right.
and at the beginning, you know, I asked her, I told her like, look, this machine is here. If you want to use it, use it. If you don't want to use it, that's okay, because I know there's a limit there. And she told me, yes, I'm gonna use it. So at the her first try was to touch someone, but
Mhm.
because she doesn't know the technicality behind it, how it works, it was difficult to create the circuit. So she came back from that and she began to dance with the machine. And surprisingly, the machine began to sound because she was holding the two poles. So she
Right,
began to move with that, and the thing was making music. And I was like, oh, so this happened, you know?
right, yeah. So
Yeah,
it just ends up creating something else
yeah.
in the process. I only got to see the first performance, but it was definitely really interesting. And throughout my past 10 years of like covering downtown theater, it was definitely something I hadn't quite seen before in terms of working with technology. Usually the stuff that I see is integrated into sort of a more like there's a linear structure, there's a play, and it's integrated into the presentation of the play. But this one was totally like technology driven. Where do you sort of see yourself now, coming off of this project? Like, do you still see yourself like furthering the technological parameters of what it can do for theater? Are you interested in exploring theater outside of technology? So where do we go from here?
Hmm. Okay. Well, I'm gonna answer your previous question first. That is the last one was Enrique. Enrique is the one
Oh,
that
yes.
uses the birds, and uh, he just. I mean, our relationship is like it comes from 25 years ago. He was my mentor, my professor. So that dialogue is very deep, you know, and has been over so many um eras, I say, you know, so many iteration. So um he just, you know, he presented his instruments and he arrived and began to have this his bird talk, you know. He begins to, you know, explore all these sounds, and strangely he made the audience participate, which is something that I never seen before. He gave instruments to the people. I mean, the ones that you don't have
Oh,
to put in your mouth, the one that is like only by touching. And he gave like to 4 or 5 people different instruments, until he created like kind of a conference of birds talking, you know. And it was interesting to see, in terms of the machines, the light machines, the ones that had color. It surprised me that they reacted the same to the same birds.
oh,
That is something that
okay.
is very difficult to see, to observe. I can see it, you know, with my naked eye, because you know, that's my whole work is to observe these things. So I'm a little bit trained on that, and I can see the fluctuations. But for the naked eye, it's a little bit difficult. The good part of having the documentation, the video documentation, is that the camera catches or
Right.
help us see better these fluctuations. So there were specific birds that made the machine yellow. There were specific birds that made them blue. Especially the one that was like the bigger one. The other one was shining like crazy. That machine was like shining and shining and shining. You know, it was in a in a very excited mood. And of course, the graphic score was fantastic to see how he created art pieces. You know, he basically composed the image as he wanted, and that was of course a very different interpretation of from the other three, like from me, Joko, and Peter. So with Peter, it was more about doing big circles, you know, being very present, and how can we see how big we are as a group. Enrique was about how can I create specific moments in the graphic. So that was really, really cool. And how I see myself now, well, I think I'm still processing the experience because there was a lot in a very condensed time frame. I mean, for me, I'm writing all the things that comes to me. I'm writing them, and normally the work evolves every time that I present it to the public, because in the interaction, in the feedback, is when I see, you know, oh, so this can go this way, this can go this way, or there's more possibilities here. So I open to that. One machine that I want to explore more is a prototype, the one that we made, like human connection. I really want to work on that even more. I think that's fascinating. And I love the idea to make like a human sculpture kind of thing. So that's one that I want to explore. But yeah, definitely I think I you know, there's no way that I'm gonna go out from technology. I think that's my more than a medium. It's like I think that with time doing this work, I became kind of a hybrid too, because there's I think in terms of that, you know, that's I have so many you know, inquiries, curiosities. Like I have so many things that I am constantly thinking and reflecting on it, from the daily devices that we use to, you know, more complex ideas of, you know, how technology affects humanity, AI, all this stuff.
Right.
That is a you know, it's a subject that for me is so fascinating that I'm obsessed. So I don't think I'm gonna go out from there. Who knows? Maybe, you know, I grow older and that changes, but at the moment, I think that's the space that I am. And the relationship with theater has been really, really interesting, because my background is not in theater or performing arts.
Right.
But because the interaction is so important in cybernetics, and observation of that interactions is key. I mean, you don't have anything if you cannot observe what's happening. Performance art and theater came, you know, they just, well, you need this, you know, or not even me. I mean, the work, the machines need this space. So it has been a really interesting exploration for me to, you know, to, and a challenging one, because I don't have any formal, you know, formation on that area, more than the things that I can read or watch, or, you know, cultural, you know, context. But I think it's a really, really interesting medium to explore, especially because I really like the idea of having, of the audience being part of the art instead of just like a passive,
Right.
contemplation of what is happening in front of you. It's like, what if you are part of this problem and the solutions too? What if you open up a possibility for everybody else? I really like that. I think I want to explore that even more, because usually in the arts, like the artist has such a center, position, like everything revolves around the artist. And I really like to take that center out and because, of course, my presence, my existence, my meanings are important, but everybody else's too, and
Hmm.
someone else is like an infinite possibility or of something new, of you
Hmm.
know an entire different universe. So I think that's beautiful, and I really, really love that with this specific project, and of course the support of Orietta and Theater Lab, because this was a lot her vision too at the very beginning. I was able to experience that, you know, I because before that my work has been exhibit. It has a little bit of a component of performance art, but it was always in a gallery, so it's a
Right.
different environment. This is like
Right.
the space invites you to do this. So yeah, I think this is my gut tells me that this is the beginning of a long relationship with the space of theater, but I'm open. I'm very open to whatever the works take me or what it needs, because that's
Right.
that's how I handle it. It's very chaotic sometimes, and a little bit, um there's like a void all the time because I don't know exactly where things go, but that's the nature of it. Sometimes
Mhm.
the actual artwork comes from an error, you know that I had an idea and I want to do this, and while I'm doing it, I'm like frustrated and
Mhm.
frustrated, and I cannot achieve what I want, and something else emerged, and I was like, oh, maybe this is the thing. So
Right.
it's a lot of uncertainty and all that. So yeah, that's
Yeah, I definitely do feel that's where like science and art can kind of sometimes collide is because there is that uncertainty
yeah.
aspect to what each thing requires, I guess. You're always discovering something in both areas. And you come from it from a very interesting angle perspective. So in that sense, I want to know sort of if you have any advice for people who are interested in the arts, who whether or not they have a background in it or their background is something else. If you have any sort of advice or just thoughts about um, what it means to express yourself as an artist, how to cultivate that relationship. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to take the risk. We all need to take the risk, because we know. For years, since I remember, I have the same motive, let's say, something inside of me that is pulling, is always there, pushing me and wiring me and configuring me the way that I am. And it was hard for me, from my generation, being, when I started, being the one of, two girls in an entire classroom of men, in, of course, a field that is still very masculine. Also in doing a work that is so out of probably the, I don't know, the regular lines of art. I don't know how to express this, but that sometimes is hard to understand, it's hard to explain, and it's hard to get through. But there's nothing, I think, more important for us as human beings that to express what we need to express, because maybe in that there's something that everybody else's need. I think communication is so fundamental, and sometimes we're afraid to express things or to share things because we think we are the only ones feeling this way or thinking this way or having these thoughts. But that is not true. I mean, as soon as you open up and you connect and you exchange a little bit of you with someone else, that third thing that is created there is, it becomes a thing, in itself. It helps you grow, expand, amplify. It helps the other. So I think there's something, very transcendental in communication. I mean, beyond, the political transaction or the economic transaction, I think there's something very spiritual, human, transcendental in that too. And I'm interested in that as a human being and as an artist. So I think artists, poets, writers, musicians, actresses, actors, we have that special, sensibility. And I think it's our responsibility. I mean, we really need to, carry that. If we go to the Greeks and Prometheus, we need to carry our fire.
You can follow Mafe Izaguirre on Instagram at Hybrid Spiritual Systems, as well as get updates through her website at mafeizaguirre.com. Cultivate is produced, presented, and conceived by Jessica Taghap and is a resident artist production. Our intro music is by Boden Kuzman, and our outro is by Taffy Rhythm. New episodes are available every week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Substack. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Cultivate Pod and get updates on residentartist.substack.com. I'm Jessica Taghap, and until next time, keep on creating.